Hi, today we're going to be learning about compound interest. We'll start off by talking about what compound interest is. Compound interest is calculated on the principal and any interest previously earned combined. So every time interest is going to be calculated, we take the principal amount, and if there was interest earned already in the previous year, then that is added to the principal and the interest is calculated on the combined amount. So that means that each year the interest will be different because it's being calculated on a different amount, because as interest is being added, then the amount that the interest is being calculated on is going to be getting more and more and more. Compound interest grows much faster than simple interest because simple interest is only calculated on the principal amount and it's the same every single year. But compound interest is being calculated as interest on the interest as well as the principal amount. In real life, compound interest is used much more commonly than simple interest. Okay, let's have a look at an example where we use compound interest. In this example, you invest 10,000 Rand in the bank at 10% per annum compound interest. How much money will you have saved after 3 years? Okay, so let's have a look at what is going on when we are working with compound interest. So first of all, when I calculate this, there are 3 years that I'm going to be working with, but unlike for simple interest, I can't just take 10% of 10,000 and multiply it by 3, because that's not how compound interest works. It's not going to be 10% of 10,000 each year. Once you've earned interest in the first year, then it's going to be 10% of the new amount. So I'm going to work out for year 1 and then year 2 and then year 3 separately. So it's basically like having simple interest where you are reinvesting each year. Okay, so we have for year 1, I'm going to work out with the formula that we were using for simple interest, A equals P plus P times I times N. Remember, this is how we work out the simple interest. Okay, so the principal amount for year 1 is 10,000. Plus, now we're going to work out the interest on 10,000. So it's going to be 10,000 multiplied by the interest rate, which is 10%, so that's 0.1. And then it's only for 1 year that we're working out at the moment. So multiplied by 1. Okay, so now if I take this 10,000 plus 10,000 times 0.1 there times 1, that gives us 11,000 Rand. Okay, so the amount that you have at the end of year 1 is 11,000 Rand. Okay, so now we're going to go and work out year 2. So for year 2, we're going to do exactly the same thing. But now the principal amount isn't going to be 10,000. It's going to be the 11,000 that we ended with at the end of year 1. So it's going to be 11,000 plus, and then in brackets, 11,000 multiplied by 0.1 and 1 for another year. Okay, so now I'm going to take this 11,000 plus 11,000 times 0.1 times 1, and that gives us 12,100. So that's how much you have at the end of year 2. Okay, now let's go and work out year 3. So doing the exact same thing. But now my principal amount is going to be this 12,100. So I have 12,100 plus 12,100 multiplied by 0.1 multiplied by 1. Okay, so that's 12,100 plus 12,100, 100 times 0.1 times 1. And that gives us 13,310 Rand. Okay, so that's what you end up with after 3 years on a compound interest basis. Now let's just quickly have a look at what you would have got if this was simple interest. So if it was simple interest, I would have taken this over here But instead of having 1 year, I would have had 3 years. So it would be 10,000 plus 10,000 times 0.1 times 3 for 3 years. And that would have given us 13,000 Rand. So if it was simple interest, I would have ended up with 13,000. But because it's compound interest, I end up with 13,310 Rand. So I ended up with more because the interest is being calculated on the interest as well as the principal amount every time. Okay, so now I'm going to give you one that you're going to do for yourself. If you invest 50,000 Rand at an annual compound interest rate of 5%, how much will your investment be worth after 3 years? Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to work this one out. Okay, so let's go through that question and see what you should have got. So I've already set it up over here. We're working it out for 3 years again. So for the first year, using the formula A equals P plus PIN, we're going to use the principal value of 50,000 because that is how much was invested in the beginning. So I have 50,000 plus 50,000 multiplied by the interest rate, which is 5%, so that's going to be 0,05. Remember, it's not 0,5, it's 0,05. And then multiplying by 1 because it's 1 year. Okay, so 50,000 plus 50,000 times 0.05 times 1. And that gives us 52,500. So that's what we should have got at the end of year 1. Okay, so now when I go into year 2, the 52,500 is going to be my principal value. So that's going to be over here, 52,500 plus 52,500 multiplied again by 0,05 and by 1. Okay, so now if I go and fill that in, I have 52,500 plus another 52,500 times 0.05 times 1, and that gives us 55,125. So that's what we should have got at the end of year 2. So now we're going to use that amount to work out year 3. So 55,125 plus another 55,125 multiplied by 0,05 and multiplied by 1. Okay, so now let's go and work that out. So 55,125 plus 55,125 times 0.05 times 1. And that gives us 57,881 Rand $2.25. Okay, so that is what you should have got at the end of the third year with that example. Now, doing this 1 year at a time becomes very tedious and very time consuming. Can you imagine having to do this for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years to work out how much your investment would be worth after that amount of time? It would take a lot of calculation to do that. Fortunately, there is a way that we can do it without having to do it 1 year at a time. So now we're going to go and have a look at the formula that we can use when we are calculating compound interest. So the formula that we use is A equals P, and then brackets 1 plus I, close brackets, to the power of N. Now, the symbols over here all have the same meaning as what they had when we were doing simple interest. So A is still the accumulated amount, P is still the principal amount, 1 is just 1, and then I is still the interest rate, which we write divided by 100 or as a decimal fraction, and then N is still the number of years, but now it's an exponent outside the brackets. Okay, so let's have a look at that first example that we did again. So it's this example. You invest 10,000 Rand in the bank at 10% per annum compound interest. How much money will you have saved after 3 years? So this is the same question that we had in the first example, but now we're going to do it using the compound interest formula. Okay, so let's have a look at how we would do this. So for this example, sorry, let me go to the bottom over here. Okay, so for this example, we have got A, our formula is A equals P, and then in brackets, 1 plus I, close the brackets, to the power of N. Okay, so now let's go and fill in everything we've got here. So our P value is 10,000. Then in the brackets, I've got 1 plus, and then I is 10%, so that's going to be 0,1. And then to the power of the number of years, which is 3. Okay, so now let's go and use our calculator to work this out. Okay, so I've got 10,000, then in brackets, I've got 1 plus 0,1, close the brackets, and then to the power of 3. Now, because it's cubed, I can just use the cube button, but a lot of the time it won't be cubed or squared, so you won't be able to use those buttons. So you also need to know how to use your other power button. Now, depending on the calculator you have, it'll look different. It might be something with a little square to show you that you're going to be putting in an exponent, but you need to use the button that's going to allow you to put in any exponent, not just a square or a cube. So I'm going to be using this button over here, which mine is y to the power of x. You might have something with a little square in place of the exponent. And then so I put that in, and now I'm going to type in the exponent, which is the number of years, which is 3. Okay, and that gives me 1,000 or 13,310, which is the exact same answer that I got when I did it the long way, but now it was much, much, much quicker. So I've got 13,310 Rand, and that is the final value of this investment. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a few that you're going to do yourself, practicing using that compound interest formula. Here's the first one that you're going to do. Question A, if you invest 5,000 Rand at a compound interest rate of 6% per annum, how much will your investment be worth after 5 years? Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this question. Okay, let's go through that question quickly. So the first thing you have to do when you're going to do a question like this is you need to write down the formula. So the formula for the compound interest is A equals P, and then in brackets 1 plus I to the power of n. Okay, so please make sure that you do write down the formula before you go and start doing the calculation. Then we're going to go and substitute in. So the p-value is 5,000 in this question. That is the amount that is being invested. Okay, then 1 plus I, the interest rate here is 6%, so that's going to be 0,06, and that is to the power of the number of years, which is 5. Okay, so now I'm going to go and type that into my calculator. So I have over here 5,000, and then in brackets 1 plus 0.06, close the brackets, to the power of 5. Okay, so now that should give you 6,691 Rand and 13 cents, if we round that off to 2 decimal places. And remember, whenever you're working with finances, when you're working with money, you need to round off to 2 decimal places. So even if this was just comma 1, you would need to write 10 because you need to write it with 2 decimal places. Okay, so that is question A. Right, now let's go on to question B. In question B, it says, you take out a loan of 10,000 Rand at 12% compound interest per annum for 8 years. How much will you end up owing by the end of the loan period? Okay, so now I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this question as well. Okay, so let's go through that one quickly. So I'm going to start off once again by writing down my formula. So it's A equals P, and then in brackets 1 plus I to the power of n. And now we're going to go and fill in. So for this one, our P value, our principal value, is 10,000. That's the amount that was borrowed in the beginning. Okay, then we've got 1 plus, and then our interest rate is 12%. So that's going to be 0,12. And the number of years is 8, so it's to the power of 8. Okay, so now let's go and work that out. So I'm going to have 10,000, then in brackets 1 plus 0.12, and then outside the brackets I have the exponent to the power of 8. Okay, so that's going to be 24,759 Rand and 63 cents. Okay, so this is how much you will end up owing at the end of the 8 years. Okay, now let's go on to the last question for today. Question C, if you invest 15,000 Rand at a compound interest rate of 4.5% per annum, how much interest will you earn in 10 years? Please take note, it's asking how much interest you will earn. It's not asking what the total value of your investment will be. So just bear that in mind when you're doing this question. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute for this question as well. Okay, so let's go through that question. So with this question, we're going to start off in the same way as we did for these two, because we still need to use the compound interest formula if we don't want to have to do this year by year by year. So I'm going to work out the total amount, the total value of the investment after 10 years, and then I'm going to go and work out how much of that is interest. Okay, so I'm going to start off by using my formula, A equals P, and then 1 plus I to the power of N. So my principal value here is 15,000. Then I have 1 plus, my interest is 4.5% per annum. So that's going to be 0,045. Please take note, this is not 0,45. If I had 0,45, it would be 45%. This is 4,5%, so it's 0,045. And then that is to the power of 10. Okay, so now let's go and work that out. So it's going to be 15,000. Then I've got 1 plus 0.045, and then that is to the power of 10. Okay, and that should have given you 23,294 Rand. And 54 cents. Okay, but now this is not answering the question. The question was, how much interest will you earn in 10 years? This is the total value of the investment at the end of the 10 years. Now I need to work out how much interest I earned. So what happens now is everything that you have now over and above the amount that you first put in is interest. So what we can do to work out the interest is we take this and subtract the amount that we started with, which is the principal amount. So we're going to take this 23,294 Rand and 54 cents, and we're going to subtract the amount that was invested in the first place, which is the 15,000. Okay, so I take this answer that I had over here minus the 15,000, and that gives us 8,294 Rand and 54 cents. And this is how much interest was earned. Okay, so this is the amount, the total value of the investment at the end of the 10 years. This is how much interest was earned in the 10 years. Okay, and that is how we work with compound interest. Now that we've learned the concepts in this lesson, it's important to practice, practice, practice. If you haven't already got the worksheet that goes with this video, you can find it by clicking on the link in the description below. The worksheet comes with an extra exercise full of questions for you to work on to master the concepts covered in this lesson. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button so that others can benefit from it too. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you can easily find my other lessons, and hit the bell so that you will get notified about lessons as I upload them.